Welcome to another TLDR US video about the Democratic primary. Voting has just finished in Nevada, and we're going to bring you the results of those votes, as well as explaining what they mean moving forward. Before we dive in, this week is your last chance to sign up to our Patreon and claim your golden US pin badge. This badge will never be available for public release, and is exclusively for our $10 and up patrons. That's about £9 for an exclusive badge, and we normally charge about £6 for our other badges anyway. So to get this deal, as well as all of the other perks of membership, check out the Patreon. It's linked down below. So who won the Nevada caucus? The simple answer is Bernie Sanders. At the time of recording, about 88% of precincts are reporting, and it seems abundantly clear that Sanders is going to win a huge plurality, possibly even a majority. As it currently stands, Sanders has around 47.1% of the county delegates, followed distantly by Joe Biden with 21%, Pete Buttigieg with 14%, Elizabeth Warren with 10%, and Amy Klobuchar and Tom Steyer with around 4 to 5% each. This is a massive success for Senator Sanders, who in the days before Saturday was polling at around 32% in the state. Most expected him to win when it came to voting, but few expected him to win with such a large share of the vote. Sanders dominated in nearly every group, but his massive support and turnout from young people and Latinos is what really pushed him into his sizable lead. We'll explain what this means for him moving forward in a moment, but first let's take a look at the other candidates. Coming in second was Joe Biden, who also outperformed his polling numbers, though not by quite as large a margin as Sanders. Second place is about what was expected of him here, but it's worth mentioning that this is a significant downturn in expectations from where they were about a month ago. Nevada and South Carolina, with their high levels of diversity, were supposed to be where Biden shone, but as Sanders has acquired more and more of the non-white vote, Biden's lead in that area has greatly diminished. Though the former vice president won a plurality of African American support in Nevada, he only garnered around 40%. A number that should be deeply concerning to his campaign. In third place was Pete Buttigieg, garnering around 15% of county delegates. Buttigieg was polling around 16% before Saturday, so his results aren't too far from expectations. In a speech to his supporters after the caucuses, Buttigieg went on the offensive, lambasting Sanders for being too divisive, while trying to portray himself as the unity candidate.
I congratulate Senator Sanders on a strong showing today, knowing that we celebrate many of the same ideals. But before we rush to nominate Senator Sanders, one thing we know for sure is that we absolutely must defeat Donald Trump and everything that he represents in November. This is important. We share these ideals, but I believe the best way to defeat Donald Trump and deliver for the American people is to broaden and galvanize the majority that supports us on the critical issues. Senator Sanders believes in an inflexible, ideological revolution that leaves out most Democrats, not to mention most Americans. I believe we can defeat Trump and deliver for the American people by empowering the American people.
This speech is perhaps just as interesting as Buttigieg's vote count, because it shows what he wants to aim for. Much like many of the other non-Bernie candidates, Mayor Pete has been desperate to cast himself as the unity candidate and as the primary opposition to Sanders. Whether or not this has been successful is up to one's interpretation. Elizabeth Warren's results tell a different story. Despite a powerful debate performance on Wednesday, she underperformed her polls by a not insignificant margin. Since Nevada operates on a caucus system and not a primary, we can see voters switch candidates if their first choice isn't above the 15% viability threshold in their precinct. And this seems to be what really hurt Warren on Saturday. The same can be said for Klobuchar and Steyer. All three of them had low enough numbers not to be viable in many precincts, and as such, lost voters in the second alignment. All three of them had higher first alignment numbers than their second alignment numbers, while the opposite is true for the top three candidates. So, what does this all mean moving forward? The biggest takeaway is Sanders' strength from this point onwards. Having won 2 or 3 of the early states, depending on how you count it, he is now very well positioned to win the nomination. 538's primary model gives Sanders a 48% chance of winning a majority of pledged delegates and a 70% chance of winning a plurality. And with the moderate vote split in 4 directions, it seems unlikely that anyone will be able to overtake his lead. There's still a ways to go before the national convention in July though, And in this tumultuous election season, who knows what could happen to Sanders next? Things aren't looking good for most of the other candidates. With a second place finish in Nevada, Joe Biden's candidacy now depends almost entirely on South Carolina, with his campaign putting nearly all of its focus on the state. While South Carolina could mark a revitalization point for the Biden campaign, it could also be its demise. If Biden loses South Carolina, it's unlikely he'll be able to continue much further. Buttigieg's third place finish in Nevada doesn't help his campaign much either, but it also likely won't hurt him too much. Since he performed about as well as was expected, he probably won't receive much of a bump in either direction in the polls. That being said, he's still polling quite low nationally, so a higher Nevada finish would have done him quite a bit of good, especially with his South Carolina poll numbers hovering around 10%. All things considered, it's not looking great for Buttigieg right now. Though, that said, he could still turn things round if he manages to glean enough of Biden's supporters in South Carolina on the 29th. As for the rest of the candidates, well, things aren't looking great. Unless they see a significant spike in the polls in the next couple of weeks, it doesn't appear that Warren or Klobuchar have any real path to the nomination. Their underwhelming finishes in Nevada don't bode well for either of them moving forward, and neither is polling particularly well in South Carolina. As for the more minor candidates, Tulsi Gabbard barely shows up in the polls, and Tom Steyer is only polling well in South Carolina, following a major media spend, leaving both of them quite far from the centre stage. The only candidate we haven't talked about here is, of course, Michael Bloomberg, and while he may not have been on the ballot in Nevada, the results will undoubtedly affect him. Sanders' sizable win isn't a good thing for Bloomberg, who was likely hoping to take advantage of a splintered primary on Super Tuesday. On the other hand, a very divided moderate group in Nevada could be taken as a sign that Bloomberg could have a good chance of sweeping in and picking up many of the worried moderates in the coming weeks. But arguably, a more important factor from Nevada in Bloomberg's campaign came on Wednesday, in the form of the Nevada debate, during which he was quite soundly outmaneuvered on a number of fronts. Perhaps the best indicator for how the night was going to go came in Elizabeth Warren's first statement on the stage.
I'd like to talk about who we're running against. A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg. Democrats are not going to win if we have a nominee who has a history of hiding his tax returns, of harassing women, and of supporting racist policies like redlining and stop and frisk. Look, I'll support whoever the Democratic nominee is, but understand this. Democrats take a huge risk if we just substitute one arrogant billionaire for another.
Warren wasn't the only person to attack Bloomberg on the stage. Biden attacked him for his stop and frisk policy, Buttigieg tackled his divisiveness, Sanders criticised his centrism, and Klobuchar took shots at his tax returns. Put simply, the other candidates were quite happy to go on the offensive when it came to Bloomberg. This, however, allowed Sanders to slip through relatively unscathed, which, quite possibly, aided his large victory on Sunday. We're going to have a full video out on the rise of Bloomberg in the coming days, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. Whatever effects Nevada has had on the primary process moving forward, it won't take long to know for sure how they shake out. The South Carolina debate will be held on February 25th, with the primary being held 4 days later on the Saturday. And with Super Tuesday looming on the horizon, things are sure to start picking up speed soon. Let us know what you think will happen in the race next in the comments below. You can also get involved in the conversation over on Discord. There's a link to the server down below, and by joining, you can take part in discussions on topics ranging from US politics and the 2020 election to gaming and philosophy. Join the approaching 2,000 people on the Discord today by discussing a variety of topics from a variety of different perspectives. You can also discuss our videos, and if you're a patron, you can access a super exclusive bonus channel where you can talk to Team TLDR as well as other patrons. Check out the Discord today by clicking the link in the description. Of course, we'll be sure to release further videos as this plays out, so click subscribe and hit the bell icon to make sure you get notified every time we release a video. Special thanks to all of our Patreon backers who make these videos possible.